Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Adrian. Today we are jumping into a book review. This is for the first book of the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. This is called Ninth Reign. Now, I know that for some of you guys over in the US, this is actually quite hard to get a copy of. In the UK over here, I actually read this on Kindle, but I know it's definitely more easily accessible just because of the way it's worked with publishers, I believe. But yeah, let's jump into this. Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. It is very much a fantasy with a little bit of sci-fi elements. I've heard people sort of talk about the sci-fi elements of this, and I think maybe they've overstated them. Maybe it develops more later in the series, I don't know, but currently this is firmly in the camp of fantasy for me. So we follow a couple of main characters. Tourmaline, or Tor, is probably our main male character that we follow. He is an Aboran, so think in lots of respects they have a lot of parallels to elves in more traditional fantasy, the Aborans, but they are a long-lived race, definitely not human in many respects, but humanoid. And he is part of this race that is currently on a definite descent. The culture is in a decline. They are dying out due to a somewhat magical plague that is afflicting their people. It is definitely an empire that is on the fall. As well as that, we follow Vintage, who is a female human who is very much a scientific discoverer. She wants to explore and understand so many different things that are going on in this world. As well as that, we are following Fell Noon, or Noon, who is a fell witch. In this world, there is a lot of stuff going on. So the fell witches are captured or collected when they are young. They are put into this place called the Winnery, and they're essentially imprisoned there. So Fell Noon is imprisoned in the Winnery. She has no way to escape, but we follow her as she is dealing with what it is like to be a magic user in this world where she is disregarded and feared and is imprisoned. So Fell Noon is that character, as well as following Vintage, who is definitely a human woman who's much freer. She doesn't have access to magic, but is very much she's very much scientific minded. She wants to understand and explore what's happening in the world. And then we follow Tourmaline, who is the Aboran, who is extremely long-lived and part of this empire that is currently crumbling. And he actually left his home to escape the reality of his whole culture crumbling around him, which is an interesting place for this character to start, I feel. Now, there are many things I really loved about Ninth Reign. I think the characters are done really, really well. I feel like the prose is good quality as well. But the thing I really love is the world building. When Jen Williams was writing this, I can just imagine someone who's reading it, reading the drafts, coming up to her and just saying, "Jen, do you think maybe you've got too much going on in this world?" Because in every respect, there's not actually that many solidly new ideas in this world. And that's not me complaining about this book. That's not me sort of bringing it down. I legitimately don't think there are many wholly unique and original things to add to fantasy worlds currently. I feel like the majority of things you could do with the fantasy world to make it interesting have been explored, and certainly different elements have really been explored. But what you can do is you can combine what has already been done in really interesting ways. And for me, Jen Williams takes about 15 different interesting world building things and just slams them together. I can totally imagine someone reading one of her drafts and saying, "I think you've got too much going on here," and her just laughing in their face, because there is so much going on here. Whether it is the sort of exiled magic prison, whether it's dealing with the longevity of sort of long-living elf-like creatures, whether you're looking at sort of blood-sucking creatures, you're looking at mythical creatures, you're looking at magical railways, just to name just a few. You're looking at alien invasion, insectoid creatures, and enemies, and there's just so many things going on in this world. And it could sound like I'm saying this is going to be confusing or difficult to follow. It's not. It's really, really interesting. I think if you want a real love letter to a multitude of different styles of fantasy, you're going to get little bits here and there in the Ninth Reign. And I just think it was something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed uncovering what was going on in the world. I think at the start there was maybe a little bit info dumpy, if that's something that really bothers you. It didn't bother me at all. I found it very interesting. Even when we were getting those info dumps, I was really enjoying the info I was getting, understanding a little bit more about this world. So for me, that didn't bother me in the slightest. And one of the most interesting things I find about Ninth Reign particularly is the humans' relationship to the Aborans, this sort of elf stand-ins. They, in many ways, respect the Aboran Empire. They respect all they've done in the past, fighting off invaders of this world, actually saving humanity many times over from this invasion that keeps coming over centuries and centuries. But at the same time, in more recent history, they are much more the humans' enemy. The Aborans are the nightmares, the stories that mums tell their children to make them behave well at night, make them go to bed at night. Like, they are the baddies to the humans, but in the long run, they know that they are not the real enemy. And that whole concept and how the humans we follow, how humanity as a whole interacts with the Aboran Empire, interacts with this race and this species, I think is very interesting. So for me, I find that a very interesting contrast between how the humans respect them but fear them at the same time. As well as that, I think that the way that this idea of the evil magic with the Fell Witches, the idea that they are handed over to the Winnery to be imprisoned, I think that is explored interestingly. I think there's a lot more that could be done with that in the two follow-ups to this. So as I get to read them, I really hope that we get to explore that a little bit more, that we get to understand how this has come about and why it is that people in this world are so terrified of the Fell Witches to allow this to happen at the Winnery. So I really am interested to see if we get to know more about that in the follow-up books. What I will say is, to conclude, that I think the prose in this book is good. I feel like the creativity of the world building is astounding. I think just there is so much packed in, but it doesn't feel jumbled, but it feels real. It feels much more like our world, where not everything is really well fitted together. Like, there is so much going on, you can't just explain it all in 600 pages. And I really enjoy that. I like that this feels like a real world we're stepping into. But actually, my big takeaway from this is I really love the way that Jen Williams writes her characters. I love the motivation for each of those three main characters I've talked about. I really adore the fact that we can understand them and we get what they're aiming for, what their hopes are. And I think their interaction and their growth in their relationships with each other is done really well. So I have a lot of hope for this series. I think that this is an incredibly good start to it. And I really hope that as I continue to read the series over the coming months, that I love books 2 and 3 and this trilogy as a whole, as much as I enjoyed reading Ninth Reign. As you may be able to tell, I very much enjoyed this book. It is a 5-star read for me, and I am very much looking forward to getting onto The Bitter Twins and Poison Song, which are the next 2 books in this series. And I hope that this will be a favourite series for me as we go along. If you like this video, don't forget to click the like, subscribe if you would like to do that, and I will see you guys again soon.